I'm James Todd with Duke's News Office, and I am here with Dr. Edward Buckley, who is Vice Dean of Medical Education at Duke's School of Medicine. Dr. Buckley, thank you for coming in and talking.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the brass tacks, the questions all college students have who aspire to be doctors. What grades do I need? What MCAT scores do I need? And how much is it going to cost me?
Oh man, yeah. Just tell me the numbers, right?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the school. If you're looking at a top tier school like Duke, I think you're looking at an MCAT score. Our average MCAT score is around 36, ranges 45 down to in the low 20s. A GPA above 3.5, and the bill you're going to get somewhere around $45,000 for tuition. That said, that range I think varies from institution to institution. I think at a state school, it's probably a little less. I'd say the average there is more like 31, 32, and clearly the cost is going to be a lot less. I don't think the GPA goes down that much. I think that's a measure of how well you can handle the material, and I think you look across the board, a good solid 3.5 or above, I think, is what you need. Now clearly, certain individuals who have accomplishments in other areas, so clearly this is not the only thing it's looked at. And if you don't have a high GPA but have a lot of other things in your portfolio to offset that, then I certainly wouldn't be discouraged. But if you're just looking by the numbers, that's about what it's going to take.
Good students that are the future doctors.
Good students.
We should say, of course, there is financial aid available, loans for the cost. You don't have to pull $45,000 out of your pocket.
Right. I'd say most medical students are under some form of financial aid, and it's usually some form of scholarship and loan, depending on what their financial situation is otherwise.
I get you. And we're talking numbers, but there's a lot more to being a doctor. Obviously, you've practiced for a long time. Can you remember, why did you want to become a doctor?
Well, I got into medicine in a little bit of the backdoor way. I was an electrical engineer here at Duke, and in my junior year I got involved with medical research with one of our faculty here by the name of Ed Hammond, and it became pretty clear to me that in order to do the kinds of things that I was interested in doing, that I needed a broader background, and so medicine was where I headed. And then once I got into medicine, I got really excited about the taking care of people and solving problems and providing a service, and then the rest was history. I just kept going at it.
And when you hear young people talk about why they want to become a doctor, are there sort of better or worse reasons, but reasons that will carry you through?
Well, clearly, we're looking for individuals who want to give back to society, who want to help other people, who are altruistic in their motives, who have high ethical standards, etc. I mean, it's a demanding occupation, and it's one where, at the end of the day, you need to put the patient's interest above yours. And if you're not able or capable to do that, then medicine's not for you.
Gotcha. And in terms of getting into medical school, some interesting changes here. The MCAT is changing in a couple years. Can you talk about that? It's been the same for quite a time, but changes are on the horizon.
Right. I think everybody's realized that it's not just the scientific background that you need in order to be an effective physician, but you need some social skills and training as well. And so the MCAT is shifting some of its emphasis away from biochemistry and physics and mathematics to some of the social sciences such as psychology and sociology in order to try to get a more well-rounded individual who's capable of communicating not only with their colleagues but with the patients that they have to take care of.
So students still have to take organic chemistry, but in addition to that, there's more leeway in terms of other courses you might take.
Right, and what the assessment drives behavior, and so by putting into the MCAT exam those kind of attributes, you're sort of pushing individuals to say, step away from the lab a little bit and think about the bigger picture.
Another interesting trend that the median age for students going into med school is slowly creeping up. And so can you talk about what's driving that?
I think that there's several things that are driving it. One is that students who are interested in medicine are trying to be a little bit more proactive about rounding out their experience. And so either they're spending an extra year in college, or if they get out of college, they're looking to do something before they go into medical school. There's a big emphasis nowadays on global interests, clearly global health for medical students. And so a lot of folks are going to other countries, other locations, Africa, East Asia, South America, and gaining some life experiences. And we think that brings a lot to the table for these folks, that they're not just running down this gauntlet of, performance, but they're actually getting some social skills and a view of the world that we really want them to have.
So if there's a college senior out there and is considering one of these gap years, what are some of the helpful experiences, work that they could do in that year as they prepare to apply?
Yeah, everybody wants to be told what to do, and I think the real issue is do something that you're passionate about, do something that you feel will add to your portfolio of experiences, be good at it, and whether it's athletics, or whether it's going to South America, or whether it's working in their local location and helping the community, or sometimes it's just broadening their educational background by getting experience in public health or biostatistics or biochemistry or something like that. But I think the concept is do it because you want to do it, be passionate about it, do it well, and it'll serve you well going forward.
Now, once into medical school, there's been changes in medical education itself, the curriculum, and you went to undergraduate and medical school here at Duke, I don't know, 10 years ago?
Yeah, about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And but it's changed since you were a medical student here, and you oversee the curriculum. What's different about the way doctors are trained and taught now?
Yeah, when I came through the system, it was all about how much you could cram into your head, and you could get the information, a great deal of the information in, because the body of knowledge wasn't that much. But now there's just too much to know, way too much to know, and the information curve is on an exponential rise. It's doubling every 2 years, and so we've had to shift from know-it-all to developing skills and attitudes which allow you to get the information out there. And so rather than memorization, it's now problem-solving skills, how to find data, how to look at data, how to use data, communication skills, because you're acting more as an interface between all this technology and science that's out there and the patient who has a particular problem that day that they need your help with, and how do you deal with that communication issue. And so it's more on that level rather than can you recite this, that, or whatever. I'll give a little talk on a future of medical education, and in the talk I hold up a book of the drugs that were available at Duke Hospital in 1940. It's a little book about this big and it's about that thick. And then I hold up today's physician's desk reference, which is also the amount of drugs that are available today, and it's about this thick with telephone type print, and clearly there's no way you're going to memorize that. So you need to know how to get to it.
Sure, and we've just been seeing photos of the new Semans Center that you were involved in planning and designing that reflects physically some of these changes in the way students are taught. Can you talk us through, introduce us to the Semans Center, and how does it reflect this new approach to medical education?
When we got a group of faculty members together to sort of brainstorm a little bit about where medical education was going, where medicine is going, and what kind of facility that we needed in order to get us there. And after about 6 months of meetings, et cetera, we came to the conclusion we didn't know. We had no idea where it was going to go and what we needed. So then the mantra became, whatever facility that we built, that have spaces that are flexible, reconfigurable, that you could use for small groups, large groups, medium-sized groups, because it's really the people in the space that's important. It's not so much the space itself, other than it can accommodate the folks that are going to be in there. And then it has a technology to support what's going on. So when you wander around the building, you'll see that the walls move, furniture moves, chairs move. You can make a room bigger, you can make it smaller. And then the other mantra that we had, the other principle we had, was that from anywhere to anywhere. And so the space is technologically wired up so that any room can communicate with any other room, and any room could communicate with any place in the world. Because we knew that there would be opportunities to interact not only within the building itself, but within the campus here at Duke, and then across the country and across the world.
How does that work in classes? I mean, do you have like virtual guest speakers who are experts in a certain area kind of getting beamed into class? How do you take advantage of that wired?
You can take advantage of it in a lot of different ways. One of the ways we take advantage of it is just that when lectures or didactic sessions are given, those are immediately available on the web. So as soon as the event's over, something like this show is going to be immediately available to folks to watch and to study. Something could be going on our simulation center on the 5th floor, and it could be beamed to the main auditorium where there's a larger group of individuals watching this scenario happening. We don't even know yet, how all these things are going to work, but we wanted to be able to have the flexibility. If somebody said, "This is what I'd like to do," we could say, "Sure, we could do this without any problems."
And so something else new in the classroom, a kind of someone is Semans. I'm guessing it wasn't around when you were a medical student. So introduce us to Semans, and also obviously what's the pedagogical value here?
Right. Well, fortunately the technology has now gotten to the place where a lot of the things that we would learn on patients, we can learn offline. It's sort of the airplane pilot concept. You can get into a simulator of how the plane's going to fly. You can simulate what's going to happen, various things, and train the individual to handle those things in a very safe environment. And then you put the guy in the plane and see if he can handle it for real. Clearly they do better, no doubt about it. It's proven industry-wide. And so we're now able to do the same thing in the medical field. The technology has gotten good enough and the cost has gotten cheap enough that rather than learn how to do a procedure on a patient, you can practice that procedure in the laboratory, in the simulation suite, master the technical skills, and then go into the clinic or the OR and then practice those skills on humans with an ability to come in at a much higher level and shorten the learning curve time online. We're now even combining it, and this is getting to the place, so we were talking about space. In order to do these kind of things, we still have to have a fairly sophisticated simulation suite, which has these big mannequins and all the technology to drive them. But we're now also looking at virtual simulation. So this is a computer program, virtual reality,
right,
where I don't have to have all this major stuff in order to pull off the simulation. Is it as good as working with the mannequin? No, but it's good enough to get the skill set up so that the amount of time I spend with the mannequin is now less. And then you take that to the clinic or to the OR, and so you streamline the educational process that way. So it may be someday that this space that we are created to put the sim man or the sim baby in becomes 4 walls with virtual glasses that you put on, and I'm sitting there talking to you, but you're not really there, and I reach out and I grab you,
Yeah.
And so the space now just becomes the space to be able to pull this off.
Does Sim Man, if you make a mistake, does he say "ow" or don't touch?
Well, it's interesting because they're wired up, and and there's usually an actor or somebody behind a wall. So if you do something, they can immediately react. They blink, they flinch, and etc. So it can be very real-like for the learner in the environment.
We were just looking at some footage of Semans in Singapore at Duke-NUS. So that's another partnership, and I think you've been involved with creating the Duke-NUS Graduate Medical School in Singapore. That's quite a pioneering way in medical education to have 2 different countries working together on a medical school. What's been the kind of mutual benefit in learning of that?
Oh, it's been great. First of all, we had an opportunity in Singapore, and the Singaporeans had the same opportunity, and that was to create a medical school from scratch. Duke Medical School has been in existence for 75, 80 years, and so, making changes here is a slow process that goes on because what we're doing is working pretty well. And so it was our opportunity to help the Singaporeans with a problem that they were having in their medical education. They wanted to try a different track.
What was the issue they were trying to address?
They were trying to have an educational venue which prepared their students to do medical research. They've made a significant investment in medical research infrastructure, and they wanted to have an educational system that would support that. They have a very good educational system for producing physicians, but the mission of that system wasn't necessarily to produce clinician scientists, where the mission for Duke-NUS is. And so it's a smaller medical school who tries to select students to do that task. And so our task was to try to create an educational program which would foster that. And so we were able to introduce a new style of pedagogy called team-based learning, which puts the educational activities on a slightly different plane than just sitting in a classroom listening to lectures give you content. The content's actually given offline. They read, they watch videos, they look at PowerPoints, they do other activities, and they actually come to classroom in order to do problem solving and in a team, which we feel is where medicine is going anyway. And so it was our opportunity to test this concept out in an environment which didn't have a dog in the race, if you will, about how it was going to work. And we think it's worked very, very well. And in fact, we've incorporated a lot of the activities that we started there back into our own educational program. And our half of our basic science curriculum is now centered around that kind of concept. And the students seem to enjoy it, and I think the learning comes in at a much higher level, and so we've been very fortunate to do that.
You talk about team-based learning and the emphasis on research even as a medical student. I mean, these are marks of the Duke Medical School.
Absolutely.
And are they distinguishing marks? Is there an extra emphasis here on those things?
I would say yes, and it actually started many years ago. I wish I could take credit for creating it, but I can't. I've just held on to it and shepherded it along. But we are a very unique medical school. We are the only medical school in the country that has a full 10 months or 12 months of a scholarly activity built into the 4 years, and we are able to create that by condensing our basic science curriculum, which preloads the clinical experience, where most schools do 2 years of biochemistry, cell biology, gross anatomy, etc. We accomplish the basics of that in a year, which gives us a full year then to devote to a scholarly type activity.
What would that look like for a medical student? What would they be researching?
Basically, what's really cool about it is they can do it in a whole host. If you look at the class, we've got a percentage of the class who do basic science laboratory research. So they hook up with one of our talented basic science faculty and work in the lab on a problem that has basic science and clinical significance. They immerse themselves in it. They really do produce very interesting products out of that. They get involved in clinical research. So they'll hook up with one of our clinical faculty research teams and do that. Some of them go away. They will go to the National Institutes of Health or to other institutions to do it. Some will get a second degree, either a master's in public health, a master's in business administration. About 10%, 12% of our class get a PhD. We have a medical science training program. And so there's a whole host of opportunities open to these students to do that. Some do global health. Some go to Tanzania and work on an infectious disease project. It's an opportunity for them to take their initial background, do a deep dive in something they're passionate about, and I think it really does. When they come back much better students, much better capable of handling the next step, which is their postgraduate medical education training.
We're talking about how medical education is changing, but that's also in response to the changing context in which physicians practice. You're still practicing. We had the Affordable Care Act was passed 3 years ago and is still being rolled out. Could talk about, of course, technology, advances in drugs. How's that context in which a physician practices changing?
Yeah, well, I mean, the landscape is rocking and rolling as we speak. And so one of the challenges for us at the beginning of the medical education paradigm is to try to develop lifelong learning skills in our students, because clearly what we're doing today we're not going to be doing 10 years from now, and maybe not even 5 years from now. I think what the changes in healthcare reimbursement, et cetera, are going to mean is that the way medicine is practiced is going to be distinctly different.
How?
Well, I think, first of all, we've got a whole bunch of people that are going to come online that didn't have insurance or are now going to have insurance. The good news is a large majority of those will probably be relatively healthy people. The reason that they got by so far so long was that they were doing okay.
And they're mandated now.
They're mandated, and they were dropping into our emergency room systems. And so now we're going to be looking at populations. We're going to be looking at how do we keep the population healthy. Different paradigm than reacting to something that happens to somebody. We're going to be looking at how can we deliver healthcare to a larger group of people more economically, because clearly we're spending way too much money that we have our gross national product on healthcare. It's just way too high. And so most folks feel that one of the ways that we're going to be able to do that is to start using team care. That no longer is it one physician taking care of a group of patients, but it's a physician team, whether the physician's lead of their team or part of the team, that are taking care of a patient population. And so nurse practitioners, physician assistants, healthcare workers, home workers, etc., physical therapists will all be involved in taking care of this patient population. So it's a different mindset, which is why and working in a team is not necessarily something we innately know, which is why we like the concept of getting team-based education in early so that you could start working with teams and develop a skill set which will allow you to take that into practice going forward.
What about teaching bedside manner? I mean, this is the famous art of being a physician, but I have to think those doctor-patient conversations are changing. When people come in and say, well, I Googled my symptoms, or I saw an ad for a drug and this is the one I want. I mean, it's different. So how do you train future doctors in bedside manner?
Well, clearly one of the skill sets is communication. The physician, at the end of the day, all said and done, forget the technology, forget the scientific innovation. At the end of the day, it's a patient who has a problem and somebody is going to be helping take care of them. And most of the time, at some point in that care cycle, there's going to be a physician. And they have to be able to serve the interface between all this science and technology that's out there and the need that that patient has at that time with the problem that they're having. And they have to be able to communicate what's happening to them, why it's happening to them, what we're going to do about it, instill a sense of confidence that we're going to do the best job that we can, and be able to make that process that the patient is going to go through as easily understood and as less threatening as possible. Clearly, at the end of the day, we oftentimes don't succeed in doing that, but one of the skill sets that we need is to be able to have our physicians communicate well with the patient that they're dealing with.
We've been interrupted by Jared on Facebook, who's chimed in with a question here as we go. He says, thoughts on the NYU 3-year MD degree? And I think I don't know if you have the context for this. Obviously, he's not talking about Duke in particular.
No, everybody, one of the big pushes is, how can we get, right now, it's a long run. You come out of college, and if you do take an extra year of college, or you do an extra year, you're 23, 24, you do 4 years of medical school, you're 28. Most graduate medical education internships and residency are 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years. Individuals 30-something before they actually even contribute to their skill sets to society. So is there a way that we can scrunch this down a little bit? Well, clearly at Duke we have. I mean, we've taken a 4-year curriculum and we've melded it down to a 3-year.
With the 4th year being for research, so you're still in school 4 years.
Yeah, you're still in school for 4 years, and the question is, could you remove that year and just if you had a group of people who knew what they wanted to do, and they said, listen, I don't need an extra year to find myself, if you will. I'm heading down this path. Will 3 years work? And I think the answer to that is yes for some folks. For some folks, it's going to require that the graduate medical education programs know the product that's coming in. I think they're going to change as well. But if you know you want to be a family doc and you have a program that's 3 years long, could you prepare somebody for that? I think you can. I think we're going to see these programs come up. NYU is not the only one out there. There are several others. And I think it makes sense. And I think we got to try various ways. It's not one shoe fits all here, but I think it's a good thing they're doing.
Is Duke considering something like a 3-year?
We have. We haven't gotten there yet, but clearly we are set up to be able to do that. The question is, should we at this stage of the game? And we have not headed down that road yet, but it may be on our future.
As we're talking about bedside manner, the other thing I think that's got to be real hard to teach is medical ethics. I mean, you take in some fairly young folks, sometimes fresh out of college, who've scored well, good grades, impressive resume, but by the time they leave, they have to be able to, look at somebody and say, I'm sorry, it doesn't look good for your son or your daughter. You have two really hard choices here between, this therapy or hospice. I mean, how does that transformation happen?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a tough one, and it's not one that happens completely in medical school. Clearly, we set the stage, and this is where the faculty play key roles. This is really a mentoring, modeling how you behave activity, and you put the student in that environment, you have them observe what the people surround them are doing, and then you help them with behaviors if they're not there. One of the ways that we try to instill this is we, in a safe way, is that we talked about simulation. Everybody thinks when simulation, you talk about mannequins and those kind of things. Well, you can also simulate patient interaction, and we have a standardized patient program where we have actors, if you will, who come in with a particular problem, and the students interact with these folks, and they get immediate feedback from the actor, if you will. Well, you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, or you didn't look me in the face, or you weren't clear in your presentation, in an attempt to hone those kind of skills going forward. And actually, not only are we doing it in medical school, but one of the examinations that the nation has put in place is a clinical skills exam that every medical student, if they want to get licensed, has to pass, which has as a component of that how well you interact and how well you articulate with patients. And so it's clearly at the top of the list of things, skill sets that we want our students to have.
Okay, we're getting close on time here, but maybe a little fun with sort of biggest myths and facts about being a doctor. I mean, so when people think of doctor, I mean, there's a stereotype of, it's high status, it's high pay, and, you grind through medical school and then you practice half the day.
Well, we don't play golf on Wednesdays.
Yeah, I was good. That's one of them, right.
To start off with, and it's not a 40-hour work week. Even in those specialties that people think are lifestyle specialties, orthopedics, everybody thinks orthopedics, dermatology. I'll tell you, once you've been in one of those clinics, you see that they see tons of patients. They work many hours in addition to the clinic, etc. The upside is I do think there is some status to being a physician, and I think it behooves the profession to maintain that. And I think that's a good thing for folks who do put in a lot of work and a lot of energy. I think the public really respects and admires folks who do what we do, and I think that's one of the upsides. But I wish I had time to play golf on Wednesday afternoons.
So to close it out, how about advice for that college senior that's I think I want to be a doctor. I've got some pretty good grades. You may have had this conversation, I don't know, with your own children or certainly with plenty of young people. Well, how do you walk them through about am I made to be a doctor?
Yeah, we'd like folks who are really considering medicine to try, if at all possible, get themselves some kind of opportunity to shadow, to partake, to involve, volunteer, etc., in some medical area to get a feel for it, because it is a long time commitment, and what we don't want folks to do is to spend 4 years or 8 years, pop out and say, what was I thinking? This is not for me. And so I would encourage folks who haven't done that to do that, because I think that will really help solidify whether this is what they want to do or not.
Good. Dr. Buckley, thank you for sharing your medical education wisdom with us.
Thanks for letting me have it.
Yeah. Dr. Ed Buckley is Vice Dean of Medical Education at Duke's Medical School. A recording of this office hours conversation, along with many other Duke videos, will be available on the Duke Today website. That is today.duke.edu.